1. The Graduate Who Never Was. Thomas Bartlett, living in Sugar Land, Texas, was a privileged and pompous teenager who was showered in luxury and love by his affluent parents. He attended Clemens High School, but was expelled after committing a series of burglaries. As part of the expulsion process, he was evaluated by a mental health professional who stated that Thomas was suffering from, quote, clinical symptoms of delusional paranoid disorder. Ignoring the clinician's diagnosis, Thomas's parents spared no expense in giving him a lifestyle of opulence. Staunch supporters of their son, the Whitakers purchased Thomas a lakeside home in Texas to live in rent-free so he could attend the college nearby. Gifting him multiple luxury vehicles and paying the steep university tuition, the Whitakers were not immune to Thomas's charm and penchants for crafting tales of success. Thomas told them he was doing extremely well in college and would be graduating on time. On the day of his graduation, they presented him with a brand new $4,000 Rolex watch as a graduation present. The catch? He never graduated. He was never even enrolled at the college. And hours after receiving this luxury Rolex, he would come to kill the very people who gifted to him the world. On December 10, 2003, Thomas falsely boasted to his parents that he had just finished his final exams and was looking forward to graduating. To celebrate, they drove to the Papa Do restaurant with Thomas and enjoyed what, unbeknownst to them, would be their last meal. What the Whitakers didn't know was that their son had been living a lie. He was not about to graduate college. He wasn't even enrolled in college, and his lies were so deeply embedded into his world that he couldn't bear the idea of his parents finding out the truth. So he sought the help of Christopher Brasher and Stephen Champagne to make sure that the truth would never come out. While the Whitakers were enjoying a family meal, accomplice Christopher Brasher let himself into the Whitaker family home and, following Thomas's instructions, helped himself to the husband's gun and bullets from a safety box in his bedroom. Brasher ransacked the home to make it appear as if a burglary had taken place, and then lay in wait for the fated family to return to their house. Meanwhile, Stephen Champagne tailed the family home, where he waited as a getaway car. When the family arrived, Thomas said that he had to grab his cell phone from his parked car and separated momentarily from the rest of the family. The family entered the house, with the younger brother Kevin, 19, leading the way. When Kevin initially saw the masked intruder, he laughed, thinking it was a prank being pulled off by one of Thomas's friends in honor of his graduation. But when he was shot once in the chest and collapsed to the floor, his mother, Patricia, screamed out, "Oh God, no!" and all pretenses of a light-hearted prank flew out the window. Kent, Patricia's husband of 26 years, ran inside and was subsequently shot in the shoulder. Thomas, returning from his car, then ran into the house and pretended to struggle with the gunman, getting shot himself in his left arm as a way to stage his innocence. The gunman then ran out of the back door and hopped over the fence and jumped into the getaway car. Kevin, the little brother, died almost instantly, and his mother, Patricia, died while being airlifted to the nearby hospital. The father, Kent, was also airlifted to the hospital and survived the murder attempt. Thomas, in an attempt to divert suspicion, initially told officers that their attacker was African American. Kent, Thomas's father, initially vowed to forgive whomever murdered his family, but his faith was shaken when it was revealed that his precious son, who had been living and recovering with Kent before fleeing to Mexico upon hearing that he was going to soon be arrested, was actually the murderer. Thomas hid in Mexico under the assumed name of Rudy Rios for almost a year, until, in September of 2005, Mexican authorities delivered him back to the U.S. to face trial. During the trial, Christopher Brasher claimed Thomas promised a cut of the $1 million insurance policy taken out on his parents, but it was revealed no such policy existed. In all actuality, Thomas committed murders out of shame and cowardice, not for money. He was terrified of the truth coming out. Nevertheless, Kent Whitaker stuck by his son's side and believed him when he blamed his mental illness for the evil deeds. Thomas, ever the master manipulator, even went so far as to claim that his death penalty conviction would further victimize his father, as he would lose his only remaining son. Shockingly, his father Kent stayed by his side and testified repeatedly that he had forgiven his son. Originally, Thomas's execution date was set for early 2018, but upon his father's ferocious fighting, his sentence was changed from death to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 2. Who is Jean-Claude Rama? Born in l'an de Seigneur, Jean-Claude Rama was not the studious type. After graduating high school, he signed up for college classes at the Lycée du Pau, but, unable to handle the grueling academics, he dropped out after only one semester. He re-enrolled as a medical student, but still could not handle the workload. His lies began when he told his family that he had passed a second-year final exam that would enable him to begin the process of being a doctor. The problem was, he never took the exam. That lie would catapult into a full-blown second life in which he was a successful doctor for the World Health Organization, researching the hardening and thickening of arteries and having very prestigious academic and political connections. He kept this highly specific lie up for 18 years. In all actuality, Romand would spend his days at the World Health Organization. However, he would simply wander the building and use their free informational services to learn more about medicine. Occasionally, he would invent a work conference that would supposedly take him to far-flung places in the world, but actually he would only travel to the airport and sleep in a motel close by. In the airport motel, he would research new medical technologies and various tourism information about whatever country he was supposedly visiting. That way, he would come home full of new information, both medical and travel-centered, to keep up the lies to his family. In order to maintain appearances and make ends meet, he would take money from relatives and close acquaintances, promising that he was investing the money into hedge funds and international endeavors. His wife also worked full-time, and during this tenure of lies, Roman took up with a wealthy mistress who loaned him about 900,000 francs, about $930,000. His lies, however, had become unbearable and tenuous, and instead of admitting that he was a jobless fraud, he decided to cover his lies with actions far more sinister. On the 9th of January, 1993, he took out 2,000 francs from his joint account with his wife and borrowed a gun from his father. He purchased a suppressor for that gun, a .22 long rifle carbine, and, at the ammunition shop, also purchased tear gas canisters. That evening, he used a rolling pin to brutally murder his wife, leaving her body in the bed all night. The next morning, he woke his children and set them up with breakfast and cartoons as normal. Covering up their mother's absence with another lie, he waited until they were asleep that night and used a gun to kill each as they dreamt. His next victim would be his own parents, where, after having a meal with them, he used the gun on both his mother and his father, as well as their family dog. His last victim was intended to be his well-off ex-lover, someone he had been having an affair with in the prior years. He picked her up under the guise of attending a high-class dinner with one of his political connections, but instead he drove her to a quiet road and, pretending he was lost, asked her to get out to look for street signs. As she got out of the car, he tried to strangle her and then sprayed tear gas at her face, but she would not stop fighting back, and eventually he acquiesced and apologized, and after swearing her to secrecy, he drove her back home. Roman then went back to his own residence, where the bodies of his wife and children still lay. After watching television, he poured gasoline all over the house and set it ablaze. He then took some expired sleeping pills, which police thought he had hoped would kill him, but were actually just a cover-up to explain how he did not rescue his wife and children in the so-called fire. As, if he wanted to kill himself, he had access to far more potent and powerful drugs, which were not expired. Initially, his lack of cooperation with police was attributed to him being traumatized at the loss of his family in the fire, but soon a more sinister motive surfaced. Police determined that his wife was beat to death and the children shot to death. They did not die in a fire. In 1996, Rama was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. While in prison, he was clinically diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, which came as no surprise to anyone who had ever come in contact with him. 3. The Tiger Child. Jennifer Pan is the daughter of Vietnamese-born immigrants, Bic and Han, who settled down in Toronto, Canada. Because of her parents' Vietnamese upbringing, they had a very specific parenting style known today as tiger parenting, where strict rules are enforced and very little praise is given to children, regardless of their accomplishments. Bic and Han were hardworking and thrifty citizens who used their earnings from an auto parts factory that they both worked at and were able to buy themselves a large house and nice cars. They built a life that they wanted their children to emulate and therefore set very high goals for Jennifer and her younger brother, Felix. Made to learn piano at the age of 4, Jennifer was constantly being pushed by her father to learn new skills. She was an acclaimed figure skater and flute player, and her friends recall her father's stern and watchful gaze as he monitored their each and every practice. At her father's insistence, she never dated, nor did she attend any social gatherings. And, by the age of 22, recalls a friend, she had never gone to a club, been drunk, visited a friend's cottage, or gone on vacation without her family. Despite her father's insistence that practice makes perfect, Jennifer did not receive outstanding marks in high school academics and routinely forged her straight-A report cards to cover up her actual grades of C's and D's. By senior year, Jennifer's lies were insurmountable, and after failing a calculus class, she had her early admission rescinded from Ryerson University. Jennifer, too ashamed to admit to her parents what had actually happened, pretended that she was given many scholarships in order to go to the university for free. While her parents thought she was sitting in college classes, she was actually working at local cafes and as a private piano instructor. Jennifer kept up the lie so specifically that she even purchased used textbooks and watched videos related to her area of study. She then continued to deceive when she told her parents that she was accepted and given free tuition at a pharmacology program in the University of Toronto. She then got permission from them to live near the college during the week. In all actuality, though, she was staying with a boy, Daniel Wong, her secret high school lover. Her lies became too bold and too specific, however, when she told her parents that she was working as a volunteer at the well-known and world-renowned Toronto Hospital for Sick Children. Her parents started questioning her story and became suspicious when they noticed she did not have any sort of uniform or even a hospital ID badge. Wanting to know the truth, Jennifer's mother secretly followed her daughter into work and soon learned it was all a farce. Upon this realization, Jennifer's father wanted to kick her out of the house, but, persuaded by Jennifer's mother, the girl who lied was allowed to stay. Throughout much turmoil and fighting, Jennifer's parents eventually learned that she had not even completed high school. But, while they certainly weren't understanding, they did help and encourage her to take the necessary classes to get her high school diploma so that she could apply to actual universities. However, their forgiveness did not mean their kindness, and Jennifer was very much a prisoner in her own home, not allowed to contact her boyfriend under any circumstances. Resorting to secret telephone calls to Daniel, Jennifer soon became worried, as Daniel was not as interested in her anymore due to her extreme social restrictions. Jennifer soon found out that he was dating another woman and that he was falling for that girl fast. To combat Daniel's straying eye, Jennifer concocted a story of a brutal break-in and subsequent attack. She also fabricated a story about a bullet being mailed to her from Wong's current girlfriend. Her fantastic stories seemed to be effective, and they all came to a head when Jennifer convinced Daniel to help her hire a professional hitman for $10,000 to kill her parents. She told Daniel that the death of her parents would lead her to inherit over $500,000 and that they could then move in together and live happily ever after. On November 8, 2010, Jennifer, after successfully putting the hit out on her parents, left the door to the family home unlocked before going to bed. Under the cover of darkness, 3 hitmen entered the large home and demanded all of the money in the house from Jennifer's parents. They then took Jennifer's parents to the basement, where they were each shot several times. Jennifer's brother was luckily not living with his parents by then. Jennifer's mother was killed, but Jennifer's father would shockingly survive the attack. The 3 men fled, having taken many of the home's valuables, as well as $2,000 cash from Jennifer herself. During the attack, Jennifer claims she was tied up, but that she was able to overcome her bondage and call 911. The investigation quickly focused on Jennifer as a suspect, as she was the only one unscathed. Detectives commented that it was an atypical scenario in a home invasion to attempt to kill 2 of the occupants, but leave 1 eyewitness unharmed. Computer analysis of Jennifer's testimony to the police also revealed inconsistencies with her statement, and once her father was able to be interviewed by police, his story varied drastically from Jennifer's. Jennifer, Daniel, and the 3 hitmen were arrested and all given life sentences, with the possibility of parole after 25 years served. 4. The Fake Beard Bandit. Known as the Fake Beard Bandit, Brett Ryan was no stranger to a life of crime. He had committed a string of bank robberies while dressed as an elderly man in order to pay off his nearly $36,000 debt. Telling the judge at sentencing that he had suffered an extreme manic episode as a result of a depressive spell and his recent breakup with a girlfriend, the judge gave him a light sentence of only 3 years and 9 months. In prison, he had good behavior and was released on day parole, which allowed him to only come back to prison to sleep. When he got out for good, he got engaged to Kristen Baxter, a woman he met presumably while out on day parole. He was upfront about his criminal past as a bank robber, but he told her he had changed. He said he was a college graduate and he had a good-paying job. He lied. His mother knew he was leading Kristen Baxter on, and threatened to not only tell Kristen but also to withdraw her own financial support of Brett. With the wedding only weeks away, Brett decided to take extreme actions to avoid the truth coming out. With only 3 weeks until his wedding, Brett took matters into his own hands. Using the arrow from a crossbow he had stored in his mother's garage, he stabbed his mother in the chest and then proceeded to strangle her in her garage. His younger brother, Christopher, heard the struggle and came running. Aiming the crossbow at Christopher, Brett shot him in the neck with the arrow and then hid his body under a tarp, along with their mother's body. Hearing the altercation, the eldest brother, Lee, came to investigate and was summarily attacked as well, but he managed to outrun Brett and took refuge at a neighboring house where he was able to call the police. In the meantime, Brett's older brother, Alexander, then came over for unrelated reasons and was promptly stabbed in the driveway by one of the crossbow's arrows. He was found lying in the driveway when police arrived. Brett tried to cover his tracks by creating an electronic footprint at his house, miles away. He attached a wooden cooking spoon onto a string tied to the ceiling fan, which would spin so that the spoon tapped the enter button on the keyboard of his laptop, prompting the playing of various YouTube videos. He also pre-programmed his email to send various messages from his home computer to make it appear as if he were home and not killing his entire family at their house. The technological alibi did not work, and Brett was arrested outside of his mother's home. He was charged with first-degree murder for killing his brother Christopher and 2 counts of second-degree murder for killing his mother and their younger brother Alexander. He was also convicted of attempted murder of his older brother, Lee. Brett received 3 concurrent life sentences, with a mandatory minimum sentence of 25 years until he can apply for parole. Needless to say, the marriage never happened. 5. Impress or perish. In a low-level position at a children's psychiatric unit of a Salt Lake City hospital, Mark Hacking always secretly idolized the doctors that he worked under. He wanted to be just like them, and through a carefully constructed set of lies, he was able to get everyone around him to believe he was on the path to medical school. His family, including his wife Lori, believed he had graduated with a bachelor's degree from the University of Utah, but in all actuality, he had dropped out. There had been hints of Mark's lies for years, though the hackings never connected the dots. 3 years prior to her death, Lori received a voicemail from Mark's mother, confused, stating how she had just attempted to pay Mark's undergraduate tuition, but when she called the college, they said he was not registered as a student. Mark brushed it off, saying he had just forgotten to cross a few T's and dot a few I's in the registration process, and that it was all fixed now. His family believed he had worked it all out and was a full-time student who eventually graduated with honors. His mother had even helped him with term papers and allowed him to keep his old textbooks at her house. 1 year later, he began an elaborate process to make it look like he was applying to medical school after he seemingly received his undergraduate degree. He would speak of the application process and interviews extensively, even going so far as having his family members drive him to prestigious Ivy League schools for so-called interviews. He flew to Manhattan, where he stayed with his cousin under the pretense of having an interview at the University of Columbia Medical School, afterwards talking at length about how he felt the interview went. Eventually, Mark told everyone he had been accepted to the University of North Carolina Medical School, and he and his wife Lori procured housing in North Carolina and prepared to embark on the cross-country move. Lori had quit her job at Wells Fargo and had packed all their possessions in preparation for the upcoming relocation. During this time, Lori also found out she was pregnant. On the 15th of July, 2004, Lori emailed her and Mark's family their new address in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Whether the house was actually there or was another part of Mark's lie is unknown, as they would never move in. On the 16th of July, Lori received a phone call from the University of North Carolina, which caused her to leave work early, crying and obviously distraught. The details of the phone call are unknown. But in the early hours of the 19th of July, Mark called the police to report his wife as missing. He said she had left for an early morning jog and never returned. The case garnered almost instant media attention, and Mark could be seen on live television making a plea for any information on his wife's whereabouts and thanking the search and rescue workers for doing their jobs. But in the days succeeding, police quickly became suspicious when his financial history revealed he had bought a new bedroom mattress in the minutes prior to making the 911 call. On the 20th of July, Mark was reported by a nearby hotel for walking in public naked with only his shoes on. He was checked into a psychiatric hospital by his family, although many people thought him to be faking, as experts pointed out that had he truly gone crazy, he would not have kept his shoes on. As the investigation continued to turn up startling facts, his family was notified that his life had been a lie. This led Mark's father to confronting him, and Mark admitted to brutally killing Lori while she slept and putting her body in a dumpster. Police would find her badly decomposed body buried under almost 2,000 pounds of garbage on the 1st of October in a landfill. Lori's parents have memories of their daughter all over the house. They have done their best to preserve all the years of Lori's life, up until her death. In the days following the news that Mark had killed her, a digital photography company, Orem, offered to digitally erase Mark from all of the family photos for free, and Lori's headstone has no mention of the hacking name. Mark received 6 years to life, a sentence that sounds shocking and inspired a new law called Lori's Law to make the mandatory minimum for murder 15 years. Mark will be eligible for parole in 2035, a sentence many believe is far too weak. The worst part of it all, says Lori's brother, is that none of this was necessary. He believes that Lori would have loved Mark no matter what as long as he was trying his best, and that this elaborate lie Mark led was for him and not for her. The University of Utah has a Lori hacking scholarship in which every year free tuition is given to a woman who has overcome adversity and startling circumstances to get where they are today.